In this video, I'm going to go over Plurilock's Q3 financials. Hopefully, you had a chance to listen to the conference call that I posted, because you need to do a combination of both in order to understand the numbers. You have to look at the numbers, you have to analyze the numbers, you have to listen to the conference call, and only then you can make sense out of the numbers. Because if you just look at the numbers, you're not getting the full picture. And when you start looking at the numbers, on surface, they look bad, but we have to look deeper. So we're starting with the top line revenues. So Q3 top line revenues is up from the Q2 and Q1, because you can see in Q1 revenues were like 11.5, then they were 12.6, and then they were 14.3. So sequentially, the revenues are going up. If you look at the prior quarter, revenues are down, because the same quarter last year they were 20 million and now they are 14 million. But many times we had the CEO Ian tell us that in order to understand this company, we have to look at the whole year. So this makes it a little difficult to look at it from quarter to quarter, but I got to talk about the quarter. So anyway, so revenues are up each quarter, right? Now, but when you look at gross profit is actually down. In Q1, gross profit was 2.5 million. In Q2, it was almost 2 million. And in Q3, now it went down to less than 1 million. Why? Well, because gross profit margin declined significantly. And again, on the surface, that's really bad. So in Q1, gross profit margin was almost 22%. Q2 at 15.6%, and Q3 tiny, less than 7%, right? So how does this compare to the prior years, for example, 2003, 2023, 2022, 2021? It is as low as it was in the entire year of 2021. Now, why was it low? I mean, revenues are higher. Why is it lower? Well, the main reason why is it lower is because the critical service component, right? The professional services, which if you followed Plurilock for a while, you know that critical services is critical for the growth in the margins, right? So for this quarter, it was lower than the prior quarter. Prior quarter was like 1.5 million, and then the first quarter was 1 million, right? So as a percentage of sales, look at these numbers. As a percentage of sales, in Q1, it was almost 9%. Critical services as a percentage of revenues. In Q2, it was 11.5% almost. And then here, it's much smaller, only 6.11%. 6.11% is still higher than the prior years. Like in 2023, it was only 4%. It was like 1% and 1% in the other twos, but it is tiny, and it has a lot to do with the timing of these contracts, and also critical services. They're like a SaaS business where you get a critical service, and let's say it's for 9 months, the revenue is recognized as the work is being completed. So if it's for 9 months, each month, and 1/9 is recognized, right? It's different for the hardware sales, but for critical services, that's how it is, right? So that's why the gross margin is down. And as a result of this, because the gross profit is less than 1 million, we see a big operating loss for the quarter of 3.7 million, and we see an adjusted EBITDA loss of almost 2 million, right? Now, we have to now look at, the future, right? We have to look at the future. And what we learn from the press release and from the conference call is that for the first 10 months, meaning from January 1st to October, the end of October, they already have more revenues than the entire 2023. So what does this mean? Well, a total revenue for the first 9 months, so Q1, Q2, Q3, is 38.5 million. And then they're saying that if you just add an extra month, because this is 9 months. This is 9 months. And they're saying that for 10 months, they are already higher than 70 million. So the difference, so in other words, in order to get to 70 million, the Q4 or in 1 month of the quarter, because the fourth quarter is October, November, December. In October alone, their revenue was already almost 32 million. It has to be more than 32 million to surpass the 70 million. So the Q4 is going to be a monster quarter. And if you look at their press releases, you will kind of understand why. So if we're looking for Q3 press releases, so it is after July. So we're talking, no, not after June. So we're talking July, August, September, right? So right here, July. If you look through every single one, there is not much in terms of any contracts that are being won. Nothing, not much. I mean, we still had 40 million of revenues, but there was nothing really announced in terms of win contracts until October 1st, which is the start of the fourth quarter, right? October, November, December. And starting in October, look at the number of contracts that they landed. 1.9 million here, critical service contract with an S&P 500 company. And notice this is in US dollars. Everything I was showing you is in Canadian dollars. Here they get this massive contract of 19 million with a semiconductor company. So that 19 million is like 26 million in Canadian dollars. Then they have another 1.7 with another semiconductor manufacturer. They have another one that they just announced in Canadian dollars, 5.4 million. Another one here, 820,000 in US dollars. Another one here, November, 1.2 million, critical services contract. So the number of contract is so much packed into the fourth quarter, right? But also this contract here, this 19 million, this contract is recognized differently than the critical services. Remember, critical service is a service over a period of time, and it gets recognized as the work is being done, right? This one is recognized mostly, boom, when it hits. So that 26 million, right, in Canadian dollars, it's gonna I don't know, probably majority of it, I know that the majority of it is gonna get recognized in Q4. And because it happened in October, that's why they were able to say that by the end of October, our revenues already surpassed prior year's revenues. So Q4 is going to be a monster. And I'm analyzing it like this because when I saw the numbers, like without analyzing it, the first thing that came to my mind is I'm going to check the idiots on the message boards, because I guarantee you that these losers are going to start spreading FUD and fear. And guess what happened? I went there, a bunch of losers got together and started spreading fear, how it's the worst quarter, without saying what's about to happen in the fourth quarter. And also, what you have to understand with people like this is that people that are unsuccessful in life themselves, they take pleasure when others fail or others seem to fail. They take pleasure in it. And when I look at, this is Plurilock, of course, but when I look at Aduro, for example, those same losers that are spreading fears on Plurilock message boards, they used to be on Aduro, but they're nowhere to be found anymore because Aduro is being successful right now. They don't get attracted to success because they themselves are unsuccessful, and it hurts them seeing others being successful. They take pleasure when they take pleasure and they are attracted to failure because it makes them feel better about their own failure. So just keep that in mind. So Q4, the revenues are going to be a minimum of 32 million, a minimum, which is going to be a massive quarter, and it's going to be the best quarter in the history of the company. And so now, what's Q4 going to look like? I think now we have to play with what's going to be the gross profit margin. They already gave us hints that it's going to be double digit, right? So if I use the number from Q2, okay, for gross profit margin, and I type it in here, and I don't know if it's going to be, it could be 12, could be 13, I don't know. But if I use that number from Q2, which is less than Q1, then on this revenue number, the gross profit could be around 5 million. So considering that the expenses, total operating expenses here were 4.7 million, and that's a bit on the high side, and I'll explain why. I wouldn't be surprised if Plurilock becomes operating income positive, adjusted EBITDA positive, or somewhere close to it. It really depends on this number, because if I change this number to, let's say, 12, then we're at gross profit of 3.8. And if the expenses are, I don't know, 4 million or 4.5, then they're going to just miss it by a bit, right? So I can't see the future. But if it's anywhere close to, Q2 numbers, we could have a very profitable quarter, right? I'm not calling for it, but it could. So you can play with these numbers yourself. And now 32 million something of revenue is for the first 10 months. Like, we still have a full month left, and I don't know what exactly how November is going to look, right? We can kind of look at the press releases, what happened in November. They got a 5.4 million order with here. They got another order here. So, and then here is a critical service, right? And critical services are not recognized right away. So it's probably going to be more than 32 million. How much more? We'll see. But at least we know it's going to be 32 million. So massive quarter. Now, I do want to touch on the operating expenses a little bit, because I always talked about in the past that Plurilock has to get to a number of about 10 million of gross profit for the year, which they already were at 5.4 million for the first 9 months. If they are close to 5 million, they're going to be somewhere in the ballpark, okay? And when they get to that 10 million of gross profit, we are in the conversation of becoming adjusted EBITDA positive, okay? Somewhere there. But now, this quarter, the operating expenses were 4.7 million. And part of this operating expenses, some of it is non-cash expense, right? Like, for example, this stock-based compensation, close to $1 million is non-cash, right? So even if we take this, we're still at 3.7 or something like that of operating expenses, right? And this number here, general and administrative, it jumped by, more than $1 million. So we got to see what's inside that. What drove this number? And the answer is, of course, here in general administrative. If you see what sticks out the most is investor relations, right? It was for the quarter a lot, $750,000. And so the company is not going to be spending this much money every quarter. They're going to be spending some, I don't know how much, but they're not going to be spending $750,000 on IR, right? This was just to kickstart everything, because remember, a few months ago, 6 months ago or so, the company raised $5.5 million because the company was going to run out of cash, I don't know, close its doors or whatever. New chairman came in, new group of investors came in, right? Brought in this money. So there needed to be a push to let people know that Plurilock exists. So there was a heavy spend at the beginning on this investor relations, and now it's showing up in this quarter. But again, every company should spend some money on it, but it's not going to be this much. So this number, I wouldn't be surprised if it's, closer to that 3 million mark, what it was in Q1 and Q2. But then again, part of it is going to be non-cash expense. So that's why I said that maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 million per quarter, maybe 2.7. And that's why I said that Plurilock needs to get to this 10 million of gross profit per year to find itself in the conversation or within a short distance of actually reaching EBITDA positive. And that's going to be absolutely humongous. So that's all I have for you today. I guess the most important thing to take away from this is third quarter looks weak. When you look deeper, you will understand fourth quarter is going to be the biggest quarter in the company's history. Margins are going to improve. They should be somewhere in the neighborhood close to probably 10 million of gross profit overall for the whole year. Q4 could be operationally profitable, EBITDA profitable or close to it for the entire year. Of course, they won't be, but for Q4 is going to be massive. So that's it for this video.